The stars watched silently as the small human vessel raced through the darkness of space. Lieutenant Amy Carson gripped the controls of her fighter ship as warning lights flashed across her dashboard. She had been on a routine patrol when the massive, alien warship appeared from nowhere. Amy knew she was the last surviving human pilot in this sector after the surprise attack on the Earth colony. Everyone else had fallen to the superior weaponry of the Zolaxians. The tall, blue-skinned aliens had swept through human space with terrifying efficiency. They called themselves the apex predators of the galaxy, considering humans as nothing more than primitive animals to be conquered. The alien ship was gaining on her despite her best maneuvers. Amy had heard stories about what happened to captured humans, especially females. The Zolaxians kept them as living trophies to display their dominance. She would rather die fighting than become a living museum piece. Her comm system crackled to life. Surrender. Human, you cannot escape our tractor beam. The alien voice was smooth, almost musical in its cadence, but Amy could hear the smug superiority behind the words. Amy checked her weapon systems. She had one torpedo left and her fuel reserves were critically low, but she also had something the aliens did not expect: human ingenuity. Instead of fleeing, Amy spun her ship around and accelerated directly toward the massive alien vessel. This unexpected move caused momentary confusion among the Zolaxian crew. Their tractor beam faltered as they reassessed the situation. The Zolaxian ship was commanded by High Matriarch Valara, a tall, imposing female with iridescent blue skin and eyes that shifted between purple and green. Valara had personally led the campaign against human colonies, claiming 17 worlds for the Empire. Human behavior continues to defy logic, Valara said to her second-in-command, Selexia. They are such primitive creatures, yet they refuse to accept their place in the natural order. Selexia, a younger Zolaxian with more experience studying human culture, replied, Perhaps we underestimate them. Matriarch, their unpredictability seems to be both their weakness and their strength. Valara dismissed this notion with a wave of her slender six-fingered hand. That unpredictability is merely the desperate flailing of a lesser species prepared to capture this one intact. She will make an excellent addition to my personal collection. Meanwhile, Amy had activated her emergency beacon and was executing her desperate plan. She remembered her training at the academy. Her instructor, Commander Diane Miller, had always emphasized that sometimes victory comes from being willing to do what your enemy considers unthinkable. Amy disabled all safety protocols in her ship and redirected power from life support to her engines and shields. The temperature in her cockpit plummeted and warning alarms blared, but she ignored them, her focus absolute. The Zolaxian ship grew larger in her viewport, its sleek blue hull designed to intimidate with its massive weapons ports and predatory shape. Amy could see the tractor beam charging again, ready to snare her small fighter drop. Your weapons and surrender. The Zolaxian command came again. Amy smiled grimly and opened a channel. I think I'll keep them, thanks, and she launched her single remaining torpedo. Not at the alien ship, but at a specific point in space, just ahead of her own trajectory. The Zolaxians watched in confusion as the torpedo detonated in seemingly empty space, creating a temporary disruption in the fabric of reality. Amy had targeted a gravitational weak point she had spotted on her sensors, creating a miniature and highly unstable wormhole. The small tear in spacetime began pulling at both ships, but Amy had anticipated this. She fired her engines at full power, using the gravitational disturbance to slingshot her vessel around in an impossible turn that the larger Zolaxian ship could not match. The alien warship struggled against the unexpected gravitational forces, its size becoming a disadvantage. Valara watched in disbelief as her ship shuddered under the strain. The human was using the laws of physics in a way that defied all Zolaxian military doctrine. This was not in any of the predicted combat scenarios. Redirect all power to stabilizers, Selexia shouted as consoles sparked around the command bridge. The matriarch stood frozen, her multifaceted eyes widening as she realized what was happening. Felt her fighter groan under the extreme G-forces. The maneuver was tearing her ship apart, but she only needed it to hold together for a few more seconds. As she completed her turn, her ship now faced away from the gravitational disturbance while the Zolaxian vessel was still being pulled toward it. In that moment, Amy triggered her emergency hyperspace jump. An extremely dangerous move this close to a gravitational anomaly. but she had calculated that the distortion would actually amplify, the jump sending her much farther than normally possible. As her ship lurched into hyperspace, Amy caught a final glimpse of the massive Zolaxian warship being pulled inexorably toward the collapsing wormhole. The alien vessel would survive but would be trapped for hours trying to escape the gravitational eddy she had created. Amy emerged from hyperspace near an abandoned mining outpost that humans had evacuated months ago when the Zolaxian invasion began. She guided her damaged fighter into a hidden docking bay and finally allowed herself to breathe. Her ship was barely functional. Life support was failing and her comms were dead. But she was alive and free. She had outsmarted the most advanced alien warship in the sector using nothing but a single torpedo and her knowledge of astrophysics. Amy made her way through the abandoned outpost, discovering to her surprise that some systems were still operational. Someone had left in a hurry. She found emergency rations and a working communications array that was set to standby mode to avoid detection. As she activated the secure channel, she heard something that made her heart race, a human voice. "This is Resistance Vessel Harbinger responding to emergency beacon. Identify yourself." Amy almost wept with relief. "This is Lieutenant Amy Carson, Earth Defense Force. I thought I was the last one." There was a pause before the voice responded. "Negative. Lieutenant, there are more of us than they know. We have established a hidden base in the Rigel system. We detected your creative use of gravitational physics on our long-range sensors. Impressive work." Amy smiled as she transmitted her coordinates. For extraction, she had survived by refusing to follow the expected path of prey running from predators. Instead, she had turned their expectations against them, proving that humans were not to be underestimated. The resistance vessel Harbinger arrived. 12 hours later, it was a modified cargo ship with enhanced stealth capabilities and powerful engines. The captain, a woman named Olivia Grant, greeted Amy with a firm handshake. "Welcome aboard, Lieutenant. You're something of a legend already. The way you handled that Zolaxian cruiser has given our people hope." Amy followed Olivia through the ship, noticing the mix of military personnel and civilians working together with determined efficiency. The Harbinger was well maintained, but Amy could see the signs of battle damage that had been carefully repaired. "How many of us are left?" Amy asked as they entered the bridge. Olivia looked grim. "More than the Zolaxians know, but fewer than we'd like, about 20,000 spread across 3 hidden bases. We called them havens." Amy felt a mixture of relief and despair. 20,000 humans remained out of the billions who had populated Earth and its colonies. But it was better than what she had feared. The Harbinger entered hyperspace heading. For the main resistance base, Amy used the journey to learn about what had happened since the fall of Earth Command. The Zolaxians had appeared 18 months ago with a fleet of warships, unlike anything humans had encountered before. They claimed territorial rights to the entire sector based on ancient migration patterns of their ancestors from tens of thousands of years ago. Humans had attempted diplomatic solutions, but the Zolaxians viewed negotiations as a sign of weakness. Their society was strictly hierarchical based on evolutionary superiority. They saw humans as simply another species to be catalogued and controlled. The resistance was led by Admiral Kelly Whitmore, one of the few high-ranking officers to survive the initial attacks. She had gathered survivors and established the havens in locations the Zolaxians considered uninhabitable. "Our advantage is that they think they know us," Olivia explained as the Harbinger prepared to exit hyperspace. "They believe we are predictable, that we follow patterns they can anticipate and counter what they don't understand as human stubbornness and creativity." The Harbinger emerged from hyperspace near a massive gas giant with dense rings. The rings provided cover from Zolaxian sensors. As the ship navigated toward what appeared to be a large asteroid haven 1, Olivia announced with pride, "Our main base." Amy watched in amazement as a section of the asteroid opened, revealing a hidden docking bay. The Harbinger glided inside, and the entrance sealed behind them. The interior of Haven 1 was a marvel of human ingenuity and determination. What had once been a mining operation had been transformed into a thriving community. The asteroid had been hollowed out with multiple levels, housing research facilities, living quarters, a command center, and even small agricultural areas. Growing food under artificial light. Admiral Whitmore met them at the docking bay. She was a tall, imposing woman with short gray hair and eyes that reflected both weariness and determination. Lieutenant Carson, the Admiral, nodded approvingly. "Your escape from Matriarch Valoras's flagship has already provided valuable intelligence about Zolaxian tactics." Amy followed Admiral Whitmore to the command center, where a holographic display showed the known positions of Zolaxian fleets. The Zolaxians operate on a principle of perfect knowledge. Admiral Whitmore explained, they believe their understanding of the universe is complete, and therefore any species they encounter must fit into their established categories. Amy studied the display, noticing the pattern of Zolaxian ships moving in formation across human space. They don't adapt well to the unexpected, do they? Amy observed. Admiral Whitmore smiled. That's precisely what we're counting on, Lieutenant. We have been gathering intelligence on Zolaxian biology, psychology, and technology. Our scientists have made some interesting discoveries. The Admiral activated another display showing the internal structure of a Zolaxian body. Their distinctive blue skin and multifaceted eyes were familiar to Amy, but the internal physiology was new information. Zolaxians have a highly developed telepathic ability. Admiral Whitmore explained it connects all members of their species, but particularly the high matriarchs who serve as focal points for this network. It's how they coordinate their fleets with such precision. Amy realized the implications. A telepathic network meant perfect coordination in battle, but it could also be a vulnerability. Could we disrupt it somehow? Exactly, Lieutenant, the Admiral confirmed. Our researchers have developed a device that can interfere with the Zolaxian telepathic frequency, but we need to get it aboard their mothership, the heart of their fleet. Amy understood immediately why she had been brought here. Her proven ability to outmaneuver Zolaxian ships made her the ideal candidate for such a mission. Before you volunteer, Admiral Whitmore held up a hand. I want you to understand the risks. This is likely a one-way mission. Amy thought of Earth, of the colonies that had fallen, and of the 20,000 survivors fighting to prevent human extinction. When do I leave? First you train. The Admiral replied. We have a simulator, based on what we know of Zolaxian ship layouts and a captured fighter you can use. You leave in 2 weeks. The following days were intense. Amy trained in the simulator, learning the layout of Zolaxian vessels and how to operate their technology. She worked with the science team to understand the disruption device and its effects. She also met other resistance fighters, learning their stories and finding inspiration in their resilience. Linda Perry, a former colony governor, had organized the evacuation that saved thousands of lives from her world. Maya Wong, a brilliant physicist, had developed the cloaking technology that kept the havens hidden from Zolaxian sensors. 2 weeks passed quickly. On the day of the mission, Amy stood before her assigned vessel, a heavily modified stealth fighter with the disruption device integrated into its systems. A small team had gathered to see her off. Among them was Dr. Grace Reynolds, the scientist who had developed the disruptor. This device will overload the telepathic connection between the matriarchs and their subordinates. Dr. Reynolds explained it should create enough confusion to give our fleet an opening to attack, but you have to get it within 1 kilometer of the mothership to activate. Amy nodded, understanding the gravity of her mission. She would have one chance to approach the Zolaxian mothership, undetected, activate the device, and potentially escape. Though everyone knew that last part was unlikely. As she prepared to board her ship, Admiral Whitmore approached. The future of humanity rides with you, Lieutenant. No pressure. The Admiral attempted a smile. Amy saluted. I won't let you down. As the stealth fighter launched from Haven 1, Amy Carson carried with her the hopes of the human resistance and a determination to prove that humans would not be so easily categorized and conquered. On the Zolaxian mothership, High Matriarch Valara stood before the Imperial Council, attempting to explain how a single human fighter had escaped her flagship. The memory still burned with humiliation. These humans are more resourceful than our studies, indicated. She admitted they use physics in ways our scientists considered theoretically possible, but practically unfeasible. They embrace chaos as a strategy. The eldest matriarch, a Zolaxian, so ancient her skin had turned almost white, leaned forward, her voice resonating with power. Do not admire the prey, Valara. It clouds judgment. Humans are clever, yes, but they lack the genetic superiority and evolutionary perfection of the Zolaxian Empire. They will be collected, classified, and controlled like all lesser species. Valara bowed in acknowledgement, but privately she found herself increasingly fascinated by human unpredictability, particularly the female pilot who had escaped her ship. No other species had ever done that before. You will redeem yourself by finding the remaining human resistance. The eldest matriarch continued our scans. Indicate there must be hidden enclaves we have not yet detected. Find them, Valara. Destroy them and bring specimens for the Imperial Archives. Valara left the council chamber, her mind troubled by conflicting thoughts. The doctrines of Zalaxian superiority had been ingrained in her since birth, but her encounter with the human pilot had created the first seed of doubt. What if there were aspects of other species that Zalaxians did not understand, could not categorize? She was met by Selexia, her second-in-command matriarch. The tactical division has analyzed the human escape maneuver. They believe the pilot must have had specialized training in astrophysics to execute such a precise calculation. Valara nodded thoughtfully. We have underestimated human adaptability. She decided order our fleet to adjust tactics. We will no longer assume predictable retreat patterns, and we will develop countermeasures for gravitational manipulation. Alexia hesitated before speaking. Matriarch, I have been studying human history in detail. They have a concept that does not exist in Zolaxian culture. They call it hope. The belief that circumstances will improve. Despite evidence to the contrary, it seems to drive them to continue fighting long after logical assessment would indicate surrender. Valara considered this concept so alien to the Zolaxian mindset, where decisions were based on hierarchical order, evolutionary fitness, and perfect knowledge. How does one counter hope, Selexia? You must break it completely. Matriarch, leave no possibility of improvement, no avenue for escape. Valara nodded decisively. Then we shall do exactly that. Prepare the fleet. We will sweep every sector, every asteroid field, every gas giant until we find their hiding places. And this time there will be no escape. Meanwhile, Amy Carson piloted her stealth fighter through Zolaxian patrol routes. Her ship was equipped with experimental cloaking technology that bent light around the hull, making it nearly invisible to sensors. The technology was imperfect, however, and could only function for short periods before requiring a cooling cycle. She had spent 3 days navigating toward the Zolaxian mothership, an enormous vessel that served as the command center for the entire invasion fleet. It was currently orbiting the remains of Earth like a predator guarding its kilome. Felt a surge of anger seeing her. Homeworld from this distance, once a vibrant blue-green sphere now scarred by orbital bombardment, the Zolaxians had not destroyed Earth. They considered it too valuable as a biological reserve, but they had methodically eliminated all major human settlements. The mothership came into view on her sensors, a massive structure shaped like an elongated hexagon, with multiple smaller vessels docked along its sides. It was beautiful in a terrible way, its blue iridescent hull reflecting the light. From Earth, Tsunami activated her short-range scanner. Searching for the optimal approach vector, the disruption device in her cargo hold hummed faintly as if sensing its target. She needed to get within 1 kilometer of the mothership to ensure maximum effect. A patrol of Zolaxian fighters passed nearby, forcing Amy to power down all non-essential systems and drift silently. She held her breath as if the aliens might somehow hear her through the vacuum of space the patrol passed without. Detecting Harami continued her approach using minimal power. She was now close enough to see individual details of the mothership, including the massive command section where High Matriarch Valara would be coordinating the fleet. Suddenly, her sensors detected unusual activity around the mothership. Ships were launching in formation, an attack fleet preparing for departure. Amy realized with horror that they must be heading toward one of the human havens. She activated her comm system, sending a burst transmission on the encrypted resistance frequency warning Haven 1. But the message would take time to reach them. She had to act now, or the attack fleet would reach the haven before her warning. Amy made a split-second decision. Instead of approaching slowly, she fired her engines at full power, accelerating directly toward the mothership. Her stealth field collapsed under the power surge, but surprise was now on her side. Zolaxian sensors detected her immediately, alarms blaring throughout the mothership as defense systems activated. On the command bridge, Valara received the alert with disbelief. It was the same human, the one who had escaped her before. Matriarch, the tactical officer, reported the human vessel is on a direct collision course with the mothership. Valara felt a moment of admiration for the humans. Suicidal courage even facing certain death. This human refused to surrender. Activate tractor beams, Valara ordered. Do not destroy the vessel. I want the pilot captured. Multiple. Tractor beams locked onto Amy's ship, slowing her approach but not stopping it entirely. She had anticipated this response and had modified her engines to counteract the expected resistance. Her ship groaned under the strain, but continued moving forward. Now less than 2 kilometers from the mothership, Amy prepared the disruption device. It was not designed to be activated remotely, but she had no choice. She could not get any closer. Amy override the safety protocols and initiated the device's activation sequence prematurely. The science team had warned that this might reduce its effectiveness, but she had run out of options. Inside her ship, warning lights flashed as systems began to overload. The disruption device was drawing more power than anticipated, the hull temperature rising to dangerous levels. On the mothership, Valara suddenly clutched her head in pain as the device began affecting the telepathic network. Selexia and other Zolaxians on the bridge experienced similar distress. "What is happening?" Valara demanded as the connection to the fleet faltered. "Our telepathic network," Selexia gasped. "The human is disrupting it." Valara staggered to the tactical display, ordering countermeasures, but the confusion was spreading throughout the ship as officers lost their telepathic coordination for the first time in their lives. Zolaxian crew members had to rely solely on verbal commands, creating delays and mistakes. Emmy saw the effect of the device on her sensors. The mothership weapon systems were firing. Erratically, some Zolaxian fighters were drifting aimlessly while others collided with each other. But the device was not at full power. The effect would be temporary. She had to get closer, pushing her ship beyond its limits. Amy broke free of the weakening tractor beams and accelerated toward the mothership command section. The ship's structural integrity was failing around her, but she pressed on, 1 kilometer from the target. Amy activated the device's final sequence. It would reach full power in 30 seconds, just enough time for her to... Suddenly, a tractor beam stronger than the others caught her ship, halting its momentum. Amy watched helplessly as her ship was pulled toward a docking bay on the mothership's underside. The disruption device still counting down. She had gotten close enough the device would work. But she would not escape the blast radius when the device reached full power. It would not only disrupt the telepathic network, but would create an electromagnetic pulse that would destroy her ship's systems and likely kill her in the process. Emmy closed her eyes, thinking of Earth, of the resistance, and of the future she was fighting for, as her ship was drawn inexorably into the Zolaxian mothership. Amy woke to blinding light and the sensation of being examined. Her body felt heavy and unresponsive. She was strapped to some kind of examination table surrounded by Zolaxian medical officers, their blue skin luminescent under the harsh lights. She was alive, which meant the disruption device had not detonated had she failed. Nearby, she heard the distinctive voice of High Matriarch Valara. The Zolaxian leader was speaking to a medical officer. The neural disruptor prevented the device from reaching full power, Valara said. But the partial activation has caused significant damage to our telepathic network. It will take days to restore full functionality. I felt a surge of hope. She had not completely failed. The device had worked, albeit at reduced capacity. The resistance would have time to prepare. Era approached the examination table, looking down at Amy with her multifaceted eyes shifting between colors. "Human, you have caused considerable inconvenience." Valera's voice was calm, but Amy could detect underlying anger. "Your primitive device has temporarily impaired our fleet coordination." Amy remained silent, conserving her strength and assessing her situation. "You are now my personal specimen," Valara continued. "I will study you to understand how your primitive species could develop such effective countermeasures against evolutionary superiors." I finally spoke. "We aren't primitive, we're different." "There's a distinction." Valara seemed surprised by this response. "Most captured humans either begged for mercy or remained defiantly silent. This one engaged in conversation. Different how?" the Zolaxian asked. "We adapt." Amy explained. "Your species evolved to perfection, but then stopped changing. Humans never stop changing. Never stop trying new approaches. It's not a flaw, it's our strength." Valara dismissed the medical officers, leaving her alone with the human specimen. "Your perspective is interesting but ultimately irrelevant," she said. "Humans will be categorized, studied, and preserved like all lesser species the natural order demands." Idami looked directly into Valara's shifting eyes, who decided this natural order. The question seemed to disturb Valara. "It is self-evident through evolutionary progression. The strong dominate the weak. The superior command the inferior. Me saw an opportunity. Valorous certainty showed the first cracks of doubt, and she pressed her advantage on Earth. We had a saying, the most dangerous place to be is at the top of the food chain because you stop evolving. You stop adapting. When you think you're perfect, you become vulnerable. Valera paced around the examination table, her six-fingered hands clasped behind her back. Your arguments are irrelevant. The outcome is predetermined. Your resistance is already being eliminated as we speak. But Amy knew this was not true. If the telepathic network was damaged, the attack on Haven 1 would have been delayed. She still had time. What if you're wrong? Amy asked. What if your understanding of the universe isn't complete? What if there are things your perfect knowledge can't explain? Valera stopped pacing the humans, words echoing questions that had formed in her own mind since their first encounter. I have studied 17 conquered species. Valera said. None have shown the adaptability of humans. You should have surrendered when faced with superior technology. You should have accepted your inevitable defeat. Yet you continue to fight with strategies that defy prediction. It's called hope. Amy replied. It's what happens when you value the future more than the present, when you believe things can be better, even when all evidence says otherwise. Hope. Valera repeated the word as if tasting a foreign concept, an error in logical processing. No. Valera, a choice, Amy corrected. A medical officer entered the chamber, interrupting their conversation. Matriarch, we have detected unusual activity from the human resistance fleet. They appear to be gathering for an attack. Valera seemed torn between continuing this fascinating conversation and attending to her duties. Prepare the prisoner for transfer to my personal research vessel, she ordered. I will continue this examination later. After Valera departed, Amy tested her restraints, finding them secure, but not painfully tight. The Zalaxians were careful with their specimens. They wanted her intact for study. She examined the medical chamber, looking for anything that might help her escape. The room was filled with unfamiliar technology designed for Zalaxian physiology. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the ship, the lights dimming as emergency systems activated. Amy felt the faint vibration of weapons fire. The resistance was attacking. The disruption device had worked well enough to give the humans their chance. Admiral Whitmore must have mobilized the fleet for a surprise attack. While the Zalaxian telepathic network was impaired, the ship shuddered under impact and Amy was thrown against her restraints. The medical equipment around her sparked and failed, the power fluctuating throughout the chamber. The restraints loosened just enough for Amy to work her hand free. She quickly released the other restraints and slid off the examination table, her legs weak but functional. The door to the chamber opened as a Zalaxian medical officer rushed in. Amy didn't hesitate. She grabbed a medical instrument and struck the alien, rendering it unconscious. She took the officer's access card and communication device, then checked the corridor outside, finding it empty in the confusion of battle. The mothership rocked with another impact somewhere. A hull breach alarm was sounding. Amy needed to find a way off the ship, but first she had to ensure the disruption device had been completely activated. Using the access card, she navigated through the mothership's corridors, following emergency signs that she could partially interpret from her training simulations. She needed to reach either a fighter bay or the section where her ship had been taken for study. The Zalaxian communication device she had taken chirped with urgent messages. She couldn't understand the language, but the tone conveyed panic and confusion. The telepathic network disruption combined with a surprise attack had thrown the usually coordinated Zalaxians into chaos. Amy rounded a corner and found herself face-to-face with High Matriarch Valera. The Zalaxian leader was alone, apparently heading to the command center. Both froze in surprise. Valera recovered first, reaching for a weapon, but Amy was faster. Desperation giving her speed, she tackled the taller alien. Both of them crashing to the floor. Valera was stronger, her evolved physiology giving her advantage. But Amy fought with the determination of someone with nothing to lose. She managed to pin Valera's arms, using her body weight. "Human, you cannot escape," Valera said. "Your resistance fleet is outnumbered. Even with our network impaired, we will destroy them." Amy smiled grimly. "That's what you don't understand about humans. We don't need to win every battle. We just need to keep fighting long enough to change the rules." The ship rocked with another explosion, stronger than before, throwing both of them against the wall in the moment of confusion. Amy broke free and ran. Leaving Valara calling for guards, Amy continued through the corridors following emergency lighting toward what she hoped was a fighter bay. The mothership was in serious trouble. Now sections were losing pressure. Emergency bulkheads closing to contain the damage. She reached a large chamber and recognized it immediately as a docking bay for smaller vessels. Several Zolaxian fighters were secured in launch positions with crews preparing for emergency deployment. Amy ducked behind cargo containers, avoiding detection as she assessed her options. She needed a ship, but the bay was full of Zolaxian crew members. Suddenly she spotted something unexpected, her own fighter, the one she'd used to deliver the disruption device. It had been brought here for study, the device still attached, but apparently deactivated. A new plan formed in Amy's mind if she could reach her ship and reactivate the device at full power. While inside the mothership, the effect would be catastrophic to the Zolaxian command structure as she prepared to make her move toward the fighter. The bay doors opened and Valara entered surrounded by guards. The matriarch was issuing orders directing the fighter launch. I knew her chance was slipping away. She needed a distraction. Taking a risk, she used the stolen communication device to activate the emergency protocols. She had observed the code while watching the medical officer. Immediately, fire suppression systems activated throughout the bay, spraying a dense fog that reduced visibility. Zolaxian crews looked up in confusion as alarms blared. In the chaos, Amy sprinted toward her fighter, dodging confused aliens and sliding under security barriers. She reached the ship and climbed inside. Finding the system still partially functional, she activated the emergency start sequence, bypassing safety protocols. The engines hummed to life as she sealed the cockpit. Zolaxian security forces spotted her and opened fire, but the fighter's shields absorbed the impacts. Across the bay, Valara watched with a mixture of anger and reluctant admiration as the human once again defied expectations. Amy activated the fighter's weapon systems, targeting the bay doors. They were designed to withstand space, but not a direct hit from inside. She fired repeatedly until the doors buckled and blew outward. The explosive decompression sucking equipment and unfortunate Zolaxian crew members into space. Valara's guards pulled her to safety as emergency force fields activated to contain the breach. Amy guided her fighter through the damaged doors and into open space. Outside the mothership, a battle raged. The human resistance fleet had arrived, a collection of modified civilian vessels and military ships that had escaped the initial invasion. They were small in number compared to the Zolaxian fleet, but they fought with coordinated precision. While the aliens struggled without their telepathic advantage, Amy activated her communication system, sending an identification signal to the human fleet. Admiral Whitmore responded immediately. "Lieutenant Carson, we thought we'd lost you," her voice crackling with interference. "Not yet, Admiral," Amy replied. "I'm aboard the mothership with the disruption device. It's only partially activated. But I can fix that." There was a pause before Whitmore spoke again. The Admiral, understanding the implications. "If you fully activate it at this range, you'll take out their entire command structure." Amy confirmed. "Finish what we started." "Amy Carson, the sacrifice you're suggesting, it's not a sacrifice, Admiral, it's a choice." Amy interrupted. "My choice." She guided her fighter in a wide arc, coming back toward the mothership at high speed. The Zolaxians were recovering from the initial confusion, fighters launching to intercept her. But she was faster, more maneuverable, and most importantly, more unpredictable. The disruption device needed recalibration. She worked frantically, bypassing the damaged circuits to restore full functionality. It would detonate 30 seconds after activation, enough time for the signal to build to maximum strength, but not enough time for her to escape. As she approached the mothership again, she saw Valara on the command deck through the massive viewport. Their eyes met across the vacuum of space. Two females from different worlds, one believing in the inevitable dominance of evolutionary perfection, the other representing the unlimited potential of adaptability and determination. In that moment, Amy thought she saw something like understanding in Valara's shifting eyes, a recognition that perhaps the Zolaxian worldview was not as complete as they had believed. Amy opened a communication channel to the mothership, speaking directly to Valara. "You asked why we keep fighting," she said, "when we should surrender to the inevitable. This is why." She activated the disruption device at full power. and accelerated toward the command deck. The mothership's weapons fired, but too late, and with poor coordination, Amy evaded most shots. Her fighter damaged but still flying 30 seconds. Amy thought of Earth, of the Academy, where she had trained, of Commander Diane Miller, who had taught her to think beyond conventional tactics. 20 seconds. She thought of Admiral Whitmore and the Resistance fighters who had continued to hope even when hope seemed irrational. 10 seconds. The mothership loomed. Large in her viewport, she could see Zolaxian crew members evacuating the command deck. Valara remained standing, watching the approaching fighter with an expression Amy couldn't interpret. 5 seconds. Amy closed her eyes, not in fear, but in acceptance. She had made her choice, a human choice, defying the predetermined categories the Zolaxians so believed in. The disruption device detonated. A wave of energy, unlike anything the Zolaxians had experienced before, spread outward from Amy's fighter. The telepathic network that connected all Zolaxians, particularly the High Matriarchs, collapsed completely on ships throughout the fleet. Zolaxian officers clutched their heads in agony as the telepathic connections they had relied on their entire lives were severed. The carefully coordinated fleet fell into disarray. Admiral Whitmore watched from the bridge of the Resistance flagship as the Zolaxian mothership listed in space, its systems failing. She ordered full attack, the Resistance ships concentrating. Fire on the now vulnerable Zolaxian vessels. Lieutenant Carson gave us this chance. Admiral Whitmore said to her crew, "Let's make it count." The battle that followed would later be known as the turning point in the human-Zolaxian war. Without their telepathic advantage, the technologically superior aliens found themselves outmaneuvered by human unpredictability and creativity. 3 days later, as the Resistance fleet secured the sector, a salvage team boarded the damaged but still intact Zolaxian mothership. They found High Matriarch Valara in the medical bay reviewing data. The Zolaxian leader surrendered without resistance, asking only to speak with Admiral Whitmore in the conference room of the Resistance flagship. Valara faced Admiral Whitmore across a table designed for humans. "Your lieutenant destroyed our telepathic network permanently." Valara said, "Millions of my people are experiencing isolation for the first time in our evolutionary history." Admiral Whitmore nodded. "We know. The Empire will send another fleet," Valara continued, "but it will take time, and they too will be vulnerable to your disruption technology." "You could warn them," Admiral Whitmore suggested. Valara looked at the Admiral with her multifaceted eyes. "I could, but I find myself experiencing something new, something your lieutenant spoke of." Hope. Admiral Whitmore was surprised. "What do you hope for?" Matriarch Valara stood looking out at the stars, "That my people might learn what humans already know. That perfection is stagnation. That adaptation is strength. That predetermined categories limit understanding." On Haven 1, a memorial service was held for Lieutenant Amy Carson. Her name added to the wall of heroes, her sacrifice credited with changing the course of the war, but in a secure medical facility aboard the Resistance flagship, something unexpected had been discovered. The telepathic disruption had created a quantum anomaly at the moment of detonation. Traces of Amy's consciousness had been detected in the Zolaxian network. Dr. Grace Reynolds worked tirelessly to understand what had happened. Her theory was that the human mind adapted even at the moment of death, finding a way to survive. In a sealed laboratory, she monitored the quantum field that contained what might be the essence of Amy Carson, not dead, not alive, but transformed, adapting once again to circumstances that should have been impossible to survive. One day humans and Zolaxians might find a new understanding through this impossible bridge between species, proving once again that the universe was far more complex than even the most evolved species could categorize. Hope, Valara had said, was irrational by Zolaxian standards, but so was everything that had led to this moment: a single human pilot, outmaneuvering an alien fleet, a resistance that refused to accept extinction, a matriarch questioning doctrines held for thousands of years. As the Resistance began the long process of reclaiming Earth and the lost colonies they carried with them, the lesson Amy Carson had taught both humans and Zolaxians: the most powerful force in the universe was not evolutionary perfection, but the willingness to adapt to change and to hope even when hope seemed illogical. On a quantum level somewhere, between existence and non-existence, something that had once been, Lieutenant Amy Carson continued to adapt, continued to evolve, continued to hope. The stars watched silently as a new chapter in the story of two species began, not as conqueror and conquered, but as reluctant teachers to one another, proving that even in the vast emptiness of space, the most unexpected outcome was sometimes the most inevitable. Valera stood before the new council of Zolaxians and humans, her position uncomfortable but necessary as the bridge between two species that had nearly destroyed each other. "The humans have something to teach us," she said to the skeptical Zolaxian representatives, "just as we have knowledge to share with them their unpredictability, their hope. These are not flaws in their evolutionary design, they are adaptations we had not considered." Admiral Whitmore nodded in agreement. "And perhaps your order, your certainty is something we could learn from a balance between change and stability." Between them, a holographic display showed the quantum readings of the Amy Carson anomaly. Neither human nor Zolaxian, but something new. A bridge between two understandings of the universe. Hope, it seemed, could take many forms.